Hello there once again, people. Welcome to yet another episode of Seeking Shamblers. So this time around, we're checking out something called specifically Tele-X, also known as Tele-X Quake. This is actually the first version of Tele-X made by Dalius. This is rather interesting. I'm a bit confused about this. I'm not sure if this is one of the ones we've seen before or not. I don't think so. We haven't seen a bunch of different versions of Tele-X. There's like 5 different versions of Tele-X now. If ignoring the version that you also could use that for the base of like Texture Demo 1. There's Tele-X B. There was Flooded Tele-X. There's also whatever this one was again, which is RGFLDTEL. That was one of the files. Like I said, there's Stereo Tele-X, which is Tele-X B. The other Tele-X Quake that we saw was Tele-X 2. So there was a B and there was a 2. And then on top of that, like I said, there was Flood Tel, which is Flooded Tele-X. So we had those 4 variants, and then we had Tele-X. Yeah, I'm a bit confused about all this. Like I said, I'm not sure if this is a different version of Tele-X, if this has a relation to, say, Tele-X B, if this is maybe revolve around like Tele-X 2. But yeah, needless to say, it's very, very confusing to say the least. There's way too many Tele-X versions. You know what actually might help? There might be a specific version that has documentation in the Aftershock singles. That's like my only thing I have to work with. Yeah, Tele-X B is another one. It's not the same level, so Tele-X B is not what this one is. But I don't have a documentation for Tele-X 2. I don't know if that's like the second version of Tele-X or what, but yes, that seems to be a different version than what we're going to be playing here. And so I'm a bit confused about all these Tele-X versions. There's way too many of them. So yeah, at this point, I don't know if I should be treating this as a separate version or not. If this is the same version, why does it have a different file name? And I can't imagine Aftershock just decided to name it Tele-X 2 for no real good reason. That wouldn't explain anything. So I'm assuming that that is a different version of Tele-X, that this was like, at least some refinement was made. And then of course there's Tele-X B, which I'm assuming is some slight variant to this version of Tele-X. But then again, the only difference I know between Tele-X 2 and Tele-X B is the difference in textures, which, like I said, we don't know what the original textures look like for either. So, needless to say, yeah, the only one I've actually gotten that has, like, the original textures so far has been Flooded Tele-X, which, as said, does not really come into this whole equation. That's a whole nother can of worms. So yeah, we have Flooded Tele-X, 2 versions. We have the other one that's basically just a texture one. And then we have 2 versions of Tele-X. And this might be a third type of Tele-X out there that is not related to the other 2 while being pretty much the exact same thing. Needless to say, we have too many versions of Tele-X. That's the story here. Anyway, this one is the one made by Dalius. It's the original version of Tele-X. At least assuming by the fact that it says Tele-X as the file name. Anyway, this is a fun, quick shareware deathmatch level. This was so early that it was a shareware level from scratch. It's based on the Great Doom deathmatch level, Telecrafts. Very close to it. Enjoy. Anyway, as said, it has single player if you want to check it out. Actually, yeah, that says yeah if you want to check out for single player. I don't remember having to do that for Flooded Tele-X or really any of the other Tele-X versions. Which surprises me when you're talking Dalius. I imagine he would have duplicated a lot of his files. So needless to say, I'm a bit confused about all this. There's way too many flooded Tele-X's, and now he's saying it might have single player. I'm very, very confused. Oh yeah, okay, that's right. If you want to check it out, you can kind of do it. That's kind of how I took this one. Because, yeah, you have to kind of take these with a grain of salt. And based on the exact terminology, I kind of like have to base it in different ways. But this one's a, if you want to check it out, you can type mindset, as opposed to other ones, which would be a flat out, yes, it does have it. It totally has that, and then you go into it and it doesn't have it at all. But yeah, a lot of these early Quake shovelware-based multiplayer levels seem to have used this sort of thing that assumed single player meant the same thing. Like, if you could load it in single player, that meant it had single player. It was a weird mindset era, but that's what I'm kind of going for, I assume, was what was going on at the time. And if you look at the previous one, which had Map 1Q, it said, yes, no monsters, though, which in my opinion is a very different statement. That one says yes blatantly, even if there's no monsters. This one said, yeah, it does if you want to check it out. Needless to say, it could really vary. It's not exactly something that's either one way or the other, but at the same time, it's kind of the mindset, how all this works, how I translate this thing out, because, yeah, you kind of need to have that gray line area, and that's what a lot of these are. Anyway, he used MS-DOS edit. If he knew about any bugs, he would have fixed them. As I said, this is basically another version of Tele-X. We've seen way too many of these. Yeah, and needless to say, he's distributed the level as a map file, so that way he had to build it back up, because otherwise it would have included the texture files, which it would have forbidden custom levels being transported. AKA a lot of the stuff that we're used to by this point with Dalius. So, with all that in mind, we're actually able to really check out the level proper. And yeah, it's basically just Tele-X. So, let's see this. Tele-X. Here we are in Tele-X Quake. And it looks a lot like flooded Tele-X. In fact, it's using the exact same textures, which is only serving to confuse me all the more. But yeah, this is basically flooded Tele-X without the water. That's how I could translate this one. And it'll be a lot easier to translate this one than, say, the one that Aftershock used, because Aftershock was doing whatever it decided it was going to do. If you notice, this one has all, like, rockets and super nail guns. Like I said, I think this is almost identical to flooded Tele-X, except that there's no water. And when I'm saying flooded Tele-X, I mean the original flooded Tele-X, as opposed to that weird file name one that I don't know why it exists. Hopefully one day we'll actually get documentation for all the different versions and understand why exactly all these versions had to exist. Like I said, I can understand this one. This is the original Tele-X. This makes sense to me. And flooded Tele-X, it's just a slight variant. That one makes sense to me as well. That one's been documented out. That one's clear to me. But yeah, once you start adding in the other versions, it gets way, way too chaotic. Like I said, at this point, I'm going to have to create this as like a separate entity and assume this is a separate level from Tele-X 2 or Tele-X B. But we might see ourselves with some sort of merger later on or something like that as I try and figure out how all this works. Plus the fact of the matter that I kind of based it at the time based on the Aftershock textures of, I think it was like tan and gray. And now this is like totally throwing an iron wrench in the whole thing because it's using id-based textures instead of the Aftershock textures. Needless to say, I'm going to have to try and figure all this out eventually. But yeah, let's start with square one again. Tele-X Quake. This is a thing. Okay, we can go from here. Well, this and flooded Tele-X, because we have seen flooded Tele-X in the original id base as well. And like I said, that one makes sense to me because it's just that level flooded. Why we needed these as 2 different levels, I'm not really sure, but I guess it was that popular and that much of a craze at the time. Or Dahlia's just really like creating different variants of Tele-X. Anyway, as said, that is regular Tele-X. Now I'm actually curious if I loaded up Flood Tell for a second, just out of curiosity. How close are we looking at here between the 2 different versions? This is flooded Tele-X. Now, if you notice, one thing that was different, I think, is that this one had a Thunderbolt. I don't think the other one had a Thunderbolt when I actually started. It has all the same things on the side. Interestingly enough, that looks like these look like the Aftershock textures. Did I transfer it over? I don't think I did. I couldn't have. Yeah, I think I'm using the Aftershock version. Let me transfer over the original version of this. Because there is the untextured version, but I think I was only using my Quake because at the time it didn't really matter. But yeah, now I want to use it in this version. Okay, so if you notice, this is flooded Tele-X versus Tele-X. Now the interesting thing is when you spawn, you get a grenade launcher on this one, you get a Thunderbolt on the other. That is one significant difference. Another significant difference is the lighting levels. In Tele-X, you can see that the lighting levels are pretty balanced. There's different varied levels of lighting. Flooded Tele-X, you had it being totally light bright. It was totally lit up. Now, I'm not sure if that was the case of the archiver, because Dahlia's used a lot of map files, so I'm not sure if the archiver or person that created the BSP, because I didn't create that BSP, I created this one. I created this one from the map file. I didn't create the flooded Tele-X though. So I'm assuming that the flooded Tele-X was light bright because when they did the MAP on it, they just did the BSP function, they didn't do the light function. While this one, I fully did it all out. I did a viz. I did everything I could to make an actual functional map file. I tried to be as complete and thorough as I can be with these things. So, needless to say, that might be a side effect of that. Or it might actually be a case that this one's actually light bright. I might actually have to go in because I think it also gave me the original map file. And I'll see if it actually, like, can be darkened. Actually, you know what? That's one thing I'm going to be driven crazy about. Let's see here. I could take the Flood Tell file and, actually, that's one thing. I think Flood Tell was one of the maps that I did have and, the Quake Aftershock, like, singles. So, we had that one as well. And I think that one I made up the BSP for. But, yeah, this will take 2 seconds to Flood Tell, QBSP, light it. Let's see if there is indeed something to light up. Because I would like to see if there's a direct similarity between the two. I'd like an idea of what the two are. You know, the more we can understand the difference between Tele-X and flooded Tele-X and all the different versions, the more we can kind of go forward and understand all this craziness. Because there's way too many. There's way too many of these. So, like I said, for now, I'm just going to say Tele-X, flooded Tele-X. The others exist. We know about them, but who knows where they kind of fall. This is the one I compiled. I just compiled it. As you see, the lighting levels are very, very different from the one that I got in the shovelware. It's a lot more like the one that we saw for regular Tele-X. And also, I should note, the design mentality is the same. You're seeing nails and rocket launchers everywhere. I think that changed between a couple of the different versions. You can see that in, like, the Aftershock loaded list. Some of these had, like, I think, like, double-barreled shotguns and different weird stuff in, like, the different areas. As we continue forward, I guess I'll, like, bring back those, and we'll see how that kind of correlates. But for now, what matters is that the loadout between these two is identical. We have both of these having the exact same things, except for flooded Tele-X starts with the Thunderbolt, regular Tele-X starts with a grenade launcher. I'm assuming that's because of the idea that if you use the Thunderbolt, you're pretty much more doomed in, water. You know, it's more of a dangerous thing. As you see, flooded Tele-X is kind of sealed in. It's identical to the original version of Tele-X. So, yeah, that was a really lengthy way to really kind of explain the two versions. But yeah, like I said, this pretty much, like I said, it plays a little bit differently from like regular Tele-X. As said, he changed the weapon between the two versions. As I said, it's really changed to just a weapon between the Thunderbolt and regular grenade launcher, just because the lethality of water and Thunderbolts. But other than that, that's the only difference I can see between Flood Tel and Tele-X. Those are the actual names of the file names, and that's kind of what I'm using to base all this off of. As said, Tele-X B, Tele-X 2, and the RGFBL, whatever you may call it, I have yet to really cover in their regular id-based formats. So I'm not exactly sure how they all correlate to each other. But I guess as we continue along, we'll figure out and try to explain how all these kind of go together. For now, though, this is kind of how it is. This makes sense. This is simple enough for us all to understand before we get all confused between all the convoluted versions of Tele-X. Anyway, thank you all for watching. This has been a really lengthy explanation of what exactly Tele-X is. Hopefully, like I said, in the future, we shall get some, hopefully you shall find like Tele-X 2 and Tele-X B and all that and understand how that kind of correlates. I can tell flat off the bat that Tele-X B is indeed a different version, though I'm a bit confused about it, because Tele-X B, they say, has id-based textures. The problem is, this is id-based, so I'm not really sure how this is going to be different from that. But for the time being, Tele-X for the Tele-X. Let's start simple, and we'll go more insane later on. Anyway, thank you all for watching. It's been an adventure. I shall see you all next time.